One of our viewers asked if I could create a pattern for a hat that incorporates the houndstooth design, and I've managed to do that. It was a bit tricky at first, I had a few mistakes, but I drew it out on a piece of paper and then I started implementing it, knitting it up to see how it was going to go. So that's the true test of whether a pattern is going to work or not. In this example, you can see that I've got one of the stitches in the wrong place. And so I had to take that out and do it again. You begin by casting on the number of stitches that you need. I cast on 96 stitches because you want multiples of 4, because this pattern actually repeats 4. You do 3 stitches then 1, 3 stitches then 1. So you want to have multiples of 4. And I would suggest doing a gauge with whatever wool that you're using, as I use 2 different kinds of wool for each of these trial hats, and they came out differently. So they came out differently because of the number of stitches that I initially cast on. So you cast on your number of stitches and then you do a knit and purl to create a rib. And I suggest a short, like a 1-inch rib, because you're not going to turn up the brim. You're going to leave it flat. It's because if you turn up the brim, you're going to lose some of the design. So since you're taking all the trouble to make the design, you might as well let it show to its full effect. Often when I want to try something on, I take a very long circular needle and I run it through my work so that I can try it on without losing my stitches, and then I put it back on my shorter needles. So here you can see that it's a pattern which is 3 stitches and then your dark yarn, which is going to be used for the houndstooth. So 3 stitches and 1, 3 stitches and 1, and you're carrying your yarn in the back. Now because it's a multiple of 3, let's say, you don't have to twist or turn your yarn, you just carry it through the back. You don't have to add any additional loops in there to try to secure your carryovers. Initially I used the 2-strand method where you have the light color on the right hand and your dark color in the left hand, and I worked my way through that. So that's like English knitting and continental knitting using the left hand. So, but it is possible to just use all of your strands of thread with your right hand, and I'll show you that. Using 2 strands and switching it, just using a very English style knitting, it's possible. And I think what happens is you gradually get your own sense of rhythm, which finger is holding which thread. Eventually, I did get my sort of rhythm, and I used my 3rd index finger to pull up the one strand that's only going 1 time. Does that make sense? So I'm doing 3 of the beige and then 1 of the dark. So you do your knit and purl ribbing, and then your next 2 rows are knit 3 in your lighter color and then knit 1. Knit 3 in the lighter color and knit 1 in your darker color. And you do 2 rows like that. With the whole pattern, whatever changes we have, you do 2 rows of it, so then it shows up better. Row 3 and 4 are exactly the same, and this is where you are knitting 3 of the dark color and then 1 of your light. And you want to make sure that it lines up with the previous row of dark. So your first 2 rows are the tail, let's say, of the houndstooth. Then the next 2 rows of 3 are the body, and then eventually we'll do 2 rows where it's like the ear of the houndstooth. Not sure what you call it, but the part that stands up. So the first 2 rows were the tail of the houndstooth kind of thing, and now we're doing a foundation of 3 rows, or sorry, 3 stitches. This will create the body of the houndstooth, the largest portion of it. So knitting here, 3 darks and 1 light. 3 darks, one light. I should have mentioned this before, but it's always good to have a marker for the beginning and end of your row so you can keep track of your pattern. Rows 5 and 6, you're going to do 3 beige and 1 dark. The dark is the beginning of the top part, the ear, let's say, of the houndstooth. So I've done 3 beige, then I do a dark, which brings you like the top portion of your houndstooth. That's 1 beige, 2 beige, 3 beige, and then at the brown, that's the top portion of your houndstooth. That's when you do your dark. So 1, 2, 3, and your dark one. And your dark thread is always going to be on top of the previous dark thread row. I think you just almost have to practice a little bit. Practice even on some scrap yarn, and just try to get used to the doing the pattern, the houndstooth pattern itself. And then a lot of what I'm saying is going to make a lot more sense because you have the experience. It's one thing to read a pattern. It's another thing to do it. And sometimes reading a pattern, you're thinking, what the heck are they saying? But then when you actually get doing it, hopefully successfully, then it begins to make a lot of sense. In this case, I was winging it. As I said, I drew it out on a piece of paper, and then I put it together, and I made a few mistakes and had to figure it out. So there's your pattern. Got it figured out. I'll repeat this one more time because I think this part of the video is a little bit clearer. You can see the bottom portion of the houndstooth, the body of the houndstooth, and now you're doing that upper left piece. So you're going to do 3 beige, and when you get to the top of your brown, that's when you're using your dark yarn to create that hook up that's going on the houndstooth. Wish there was names for these things. Maybe there is, and if there is, and you know them, let me know. So you're going to do 2 rows like this, where you're going to do 3 of the light color, 1 of the dark. 3 of the light, 1 of the dark. And see how nicely it comes out in the back of your work? Now we're at the, you've got 1 complete pattern of houndstooth finished. Now you're going to begin your next row where you start the next houndstooth pattern in line. So again, you start with 1 and then knit 3 in your lighter color. 1 in the dark, knit 3 in the lighter color, and you work your way around. When you've completed your rounds of houndstooth pattern, and you're going to start your next row, your next set of houndstooth, what you want to do is make sure that that brown stitch or the dark colored stitch lines up with your previous row of houndstooth, the part that sticks down. Let's call it the tail. So I'm going to do 1 dark, and then I'm going to do light color, light color, light color, 3. So see how it's a pattern of 3 and 1, 3 and 1. So now I'm going to do 1 dark and 3 beige. Then 1 dark to line up, and then 3 beige. Every once in a while you're going to have to glance at your work just to make sure you're doing it right. Even for me, once in a while I get confused and thinking, where am I doing? Is this right? Am I supposed to be doing dark above here? What about this? Yep. 1 dark, and then 3 beige. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. I hope it's clear enough for you. And if you try it, please let me know. And you can always send me a picture to counselorsue@icloud.com. and I love to see your work. It's one way that we can do this anyway. So happy knitting. Hope you enjoy your week. We've actually got some sunshine, which I am so grateful for. I feel like running outside and throwing up my arms and saying, yay, you've come, you've arrived. Anyways, happy knitting.